Microsoft's Xbox was definitely an innovative console when it came to market, with the inclusion of an internal hard drive, as well as an integrated Ethernet port. The Xbox was a breath of fresh air. Another great feature of the console was its video output, with almost its entire library supporting 480p, and some going as high as 720p and 1080i. While there are many great options to get good quality video from the system, a new one has emerged from the folks over at EON, and it has some other pretty cool tricks up its sleeve. Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Tito and welcome to another episode of Retro Renew. Today I have the privilege of showcasing a very interesting brand new accessory for the original Xbox from the folks over at EON. This is the XBHD adapter, and it's pretty different from some of the other products that we've seen come from the company. EON is probably best known for their HDMI adapters, such as the Super 64 for the Nintendo 64 and the GCHD Mark 1 and 2 for the GameCube. These kits provide easy, plug-and-play solutions for getting these consoles connected to your HD television via HDMI. Now, with the XBHD, they bring that convenience to the original Xbox, but it has a few other interesting tricks up its sleeve. So, let's dive right in. Okay, so in this video, we'll first take a look at the XBHD's packaging and do a quick unboxing. Then, we'll take a look at the device itself, show you how to properly set up and operate it, review all of its features, compare it to other options that are currently available by taking a look at captured footage of all devices, tear it down and check out the internals, review the pros and cons, and of course provide you with my overall thoughts. Okay, so we got a lot to go over, so for your convenience, I actually added timestamps in the video description so you can skip around the video to check out the sections that interest you most. And with that, let's start things off by unboxing the XBHD. So here it is. The box itself is actually really nice. I know that EON products do tend to come with nice presentation, and it's even highlighted on their product's description as stylized custom packaging. The box lid is actually held shut magnetically, and the overall package definitely lends itself to a premium feel. And here on the back is a bit of information about the XBHD's features, but we'll be going over all of them here in just a moment. Alright, let's take a look inside. First thing we see is a short instructions manual, which talks about the features of the device, as well as some important setup and optimization instructions. We'll set that aside for now. And here we have the XBHD adapter itself. So taking a look around the device, we see here the standard Xbox AV connector on the right, and the Ethernet jack on the left. On top, we have a nice EON logo. And on the bottom, we have some more EON branding, but also these 2 feet which help relieve tension on the ports, which is a nice touch. We'll be talking about this later. Now around back is where the meat and potatoes of the entire device resides. Going from left to right, we see a mini Toslink jack, which not only supports standard headphones, but also optical audio. And here we have not one, but 2 HDMI ports that supports output to 2 monitors simultaneously, which I'm sure is a boon for streamers of OG Xbox content. And lastly, we have 3 Ethernet ports, allowing you to connect up to 4 Xbox consoles together without the need of a separate network switch. The overall device basically looks kind of like a mini Xbox, which is cool and makes for a great looking extension of the existing console. Alright, so that's everything you get in the package. Next, I'm going to show you how to set up the XBHD to get optimal performance, but before we do that, let's talk about the sponsor of today's video, PCBWay. If you have an idea for a mod or want to assemble an open-sourced project, PCBWay provides you with the tools to make that happen. From 3D printing services in an array of materials, all the way to other services like CNC machining, injection molding, and of course, PCB and flex ribbon fabrication. So when it comes to taking your retro gaming mods to the next level, PCBWay is the place to make that happen. Check out the link in the description for PCBWay to get $5 off your first order, and again, a huge thank you to PCBWay for sponsoring this video. Alright, with that out of the way, let me show you how to properly prep and set up the XBHD. First thing we're going to do is plug the EON adapter into the Xbox. You need to make sure that both the AV port and the Ethernet jack are properly aligned before applying force to seat the adapter. Then go ahead and plug in your HDMI cable. And making sure there's no game in the console, turn it on. It may take some time for an image to appear on screen, but give it a few seconds. Once you're at the Xbox home menu, select Settings, then go to Video, and then make sure that 480p and 720p are enabled. The instructions say to not even bother enabling 1080i, and I'm assuming that's because of potential lag that may be introduced using that mode. Now, one of the things I noticed that wasn't in the instructions was what to set the video mode as. Since I am using a widescreen 16:9 display, I selected widescreen instead of normal. Alright, so after the device is ready, we can now start gaming on the console. Now, before I show you captured footage of the device, let me quickly go over all of the XBHD's features, which I already sort of touched upon during the unboxing. First, as I stated earlier, the adapter supports dual monitor output via 2 HDMI ports. This can either be used for literally connecting 2 monitors to a single system for what I can only assume to be a more comfortable 2-player gaming experience. Or what I think is more likely is that this is actually very well suited for a streaming setup, allowing one HDMI port to be connected to a capture card and the other to an external monitor. Now, of course, the other major feature is the ability to connect up to 4 Xbox consoles together. I unfortunately can't show this in action since I don't have 4 Xbox consoles or multiple copies of the same game, let alone friends to game with. Now, I was able to connect 2 Xbox consoles together, which really doesn't prove much since you can do that with a simple crossover network cable. But since this does work, I'm assuming that this will work for up to 3 and 4 Xbox consoles that are connected to each other. Anyway, I'm going to give EON the benefit of the doubt that this feature does indeed work. Another great feature is the audio jack, which works great with headphones, which could be good for, again, streaming setups. I personally tested them and the volume was set at really just the right level, not too loud or not too soft. Now, you may need one of those headphones with the volume knob to control the output since you can't seem to do that directly from the Xbox adapter. Now, that same port can also be connected optically using a mini Toslink cable to your home theater setup, which is pretty cool. And really, the only other feature of note are these feet here on the bottom of the unit that alleviate any potential tension placed on both the AV port and the Ethernet port, which is a nice sort of safety feature. Okay, so now that we went over all the features, let's take a look at some captured footage of the XBHD and compare it to some alternative options. So there are quite a few commercially available options for the Xbox when it comes to getting good quality video via HDMI. Here I'll be looking at 3 options, ranging from really cheap all the way to pretty darn expensive. These alternative options include the Chimeric Systems HDMI adapter, regular standard component cables connected to a scaler, and of course, I just had to compare it to my Make MHz HD Plus modded Xbox, which is a digital-to-digital internal HDMI mod. Now, before we get into the comparison, let me first show you what the video output of the EON XBHD looks like compared to a standard composite signal, just sort of to set a baseline. And as you can see, there's definitely a huge improvement. That's one of the great things about the Xbox library. The vast majority of games support 480p and even 720p for some titles, which is just great when utilizing the appropriate cables or adapters like the EON. Anyway, now let's finally take a look at how the XBHD compares to some of the other more comparable options that are out there. First, here I have Jet Set Radio playing on all the various output options for comparison. It's a bit hard to see the differences, so we'll take a look at how the EON XBHD compares to each alternative head to head. Let's start with the comparison against the Chimeric Systems HDMI adapter. If you look at the area immediately behind Snake, you can see that there is definitely some noise. Whereas in the Chimeric Systems video output, there isn't as much, although there is still some noise present in other areas. Because we're dealing with analog signals, there will invariably be some noise. Additionally, I have noticed the overall brightness of the EON adapter is a bit darker. I'm sure this can be compensated for if you increase the brightness of your monitor, but this is still something to consider. Now, taking a look at the really cheap component cables that I got from Amazon, connected through a RetroTink 5X, you can see again that the image is still certainly brighter, with less noticeable noise that is in the region right behind Snake. Now, of course, this method is only cheaper if you already have a scaler of some kind in your setup. Buying something like a Tink 5X or OSSC would make this a considerably more expensive option. However, if you're into retro gaming in general, then a quality scaler is a great, versatile tool to have as you can use it with all your retro consoles. And lastly, when we compare the EON to my Xbox modded with a Make MHz HD Plus kit, you can see that there is no noise at all and the overall image just looks much cleaner. Now, this is a bit of an unfair comparison since the Make Megahertz kit is an internal digital-to-digital HDMI mod, but I thought it would be good to have as a comparison. Here's some more captured footage of Forza. Again, comparing the EON to the standard component cables connected to the Tink 5X, here the noise isn't as noticeable, but still the EON kit does look a bit darker. And when compared again to the Chimeric Systems adapter during the Shenmue 2 opening sequence, we can still see that the overall image is a bit darker with the EON adapter. Alright, so after taking a look at how the EON XBHD performs with respect to its video output, I'm very curious to see what this thing looks like on the inside. So let's take a look. First things first, the outside is very robust. It was super hard to bust this thing open. I think that the two halves of the shell were basically fused together, making this very difficult to get into without completely mangling the shell, which is definitely a bit of a bummer. There weren't any clips or screws holding this thing together, so once you open it, you likely won't be able to fully close it again. For repairability, this isn't the best. Anyway, after finally getting the XBHD open, we can finally take a look at how this thing is put together. We can see that this adapter has three distinct parts. The main board, which does the analog to digital conversion necessary for HDMI video output. This here is what I call the network board, which allows us to connect multiple Xbox consoles together, and this standalone Ethernet jack. Now I have to say that after opening this up and taking a look inside, it actually looks pretty nice and tidy, and pretty well designed. Historically, on their previous adapters, build quality has been hit or miss. For example, here's what their N64 adapter looked like. Not the cleanest build, especially with regard to how the connector was attached. By comparison, the XBHD looks quite a bit more refined and well put together. Anyway, let's take out all the boards to get a closer look at each one. With everything out, we can see that there is a cable that connects the main board to the network board, which most likely is providing power to the network board. Now, the main board is really what I'm most concerned with. I had a few friends take a look at this who are far more knowledgeable than I am, and it appears that this large chip on top is what is splitting the video signal to the two HDMI ports. All the markings have been etched off, so we don't really know exactly what the part number is for this IC. Flipping the board over, we can see another integrated chip under the metal housing of the AV connector, which is most likely the analog to digital converter, or ADC. Again, this chip has also been etched, so we can't see the exact part number. Now, interestingly, if we look at the AV connector, it appears as though a piece of it has been cut off, as evident with this slight bend shown here. It seems as though that this is an off-the-shelf connector, most likely like this one found off of AliExpress, with this part here sheared off. It would have been nice to see EON use a connector designed for their specific application, given the cost of this unit. Additionally, the way that it's soldered to the board is interesting. It seems they designed the PCB around the connector instead of the other way around, since this connector appears to be designed for a cable application as opposed to being mounted to a PCB. Anyway, enough about that. Now let's take a look at the network board. On the bottom, we have a few ICs. The main one in the middle has been etched, so again, we can't see the part number, and the other two appear to be Mentech branded local area network transformers. Other than that, there really isn't much more I can say about this particular board. So that's pretty much the inside of the XBHD. It definitely appears to be quite a bit more refined and better put together than their older products. However, they did seem to skimp on the connector. Other than that, and the fact that the case is fused shut, I think internally it looks pretty good. Okay, now that we've seen the XBHD internals, let's discuss the pros and cons. Starting with the pros, the XBHD is a simple, plug-and-play option needing no modification to your Xbox and delivers decent video quality. Additionally, it comes with some really unique features not found on any other adapter, like dual monitor output and the ability to network up to 4 Xbox consoles together, all in a single, compact package that doesn't require any external power, which is fantastic. And lastly, the design of the case was very thoroughly done, especially with respect to the addition of the feed on the bottom to eliminate strain on both the AV and Ethernet ports. Overall, a fantastically designed little unit. Anyway, those are the pros. But now, let's get into the cons. For me, the absolute biggest con is the price. At $190, this is incredibly expensive. But I have to caveat that with a question. Who is this device really for? For someone like me, who is primarily concerned with being able to easily play their OG Xbox on an HDTV, then yes, this is an expensive item. There are many alternatives like the Chimeric Systems adapter, which is only about $60, even though they're currently unavailable, and options like simply using component cables or a cheap ADC. But there's obviously more to this device than just simply HDMI connectivity. We have dual video support, which I think is great for streamers, and the networking capability for folks who love to host LAN parties with their OG Xbox. Now, for those people, the fact that this can significantly simplify your setup, meaning no need for an HDMI splitter for dual monitor support, or a separate network switch for LAN parties, then I really think the price tag may be worth it. But for those people just looking for a simple plug-and-play HDMI adapter for their Xbox, I think there are other fantastic and, more importantly, cheaper options you can consider. Another con that I was a bit surprised about was the noticeably darker and slightly noisier image. While the noise is really only visible when looking at a still background, the darker video was a bit distracting. Again, I think this can be compensated for by increasing the brightness on screen, but it is still something to take note of. And really, the only other con, which isn't that huge of a deal, is the HDMI port that EON is using on these adapters. They are super tight. I'm hoping that these loosen up with a bit of time and with use, but man, you really gotta use some force to insert and remove HDMI cables. So in conclusion, if you're looking for a device that allows you to play your original Xbox on an HD television through HDMI, I think there are several fantastic alternatives that are quite a bit cheaper that perform at a level of quality that is equal to or better than the EON XBHD. Now, on the other hand, if you're a person who is an absolute Xbox enthusiast that streams games or hosts Xbox LAN parties on occasion, then the EON kit begins to make quite a bit more sense and looks far more attractive. But again, unless you're looking to utilize the entire suite of features offered in the EON XBHD, I find it a bit difficult to justify the price for simple HDMI connectivity. Well, there you have it, folks. The all-new EON XBHD adapter for the OG Xbox. A product with a ton of functionality built in, but with a pretty hefty price tag as well. Now, if you enjoyed this video, I really think you'll like this one here, so check it out. And as always, thank you all so much for tuning in today, and I'll catch you again very soon.